You ever had one of those moments where you just sit there, staring at somebody, thinking, did they really just say that to me? Yeah, that was me. And let me tell y'all something. I ain't one of those quiet old ladies who just smiles and takes it. Nope. You disrespect me in front of my family? Oh baby, you better be ready for what's coming. But before I get into that little birthday surprise I cooked up, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now if you've ever been underestimated just because of your age. And please, comment the city you're watching from. I love knowing where my people are tuning in from, while I spill this wild story. Alright, so it all started on a warm Saturday afternoon, my grandson Danny's 8th birthday. My little sunshine. I'd been looking forward to that day for weeks. Got him a big ol' remote control car he'd been begging for, wrapped it myself, even baked his favorite chocolate cake just like I used to when my daughter was his age. I was so excited. I even wore my best Sunday dress, blue floral print, the one that made me feel like myself again. But honey, the second I walked through that backyard gate, I could feel the tension. You know that thick air where folks smile at you, but it don't reach their eyes. Yeah, that kind of tension. My daughter, Melissa, came strutting over in her fancy little heels, fake smile plastered on. "Oh mom, you made it," she said, kissing the air like I was some stranger. I just nodded. Of course I did. Wouldn't miss my grandson's birthday. Now her husband, Rick. Lord, that man thinks he's some big shot just 'cause he runs a car dealership. He was standing by the grill, big gold watch, flashing in the sun, like he was at a damn red carpet event. The second he saw me, his whole face shifted. You could see it. The irritation. Like my very existence was missing with his perfect image. I ignored it. I wasn't about to let his attitude ruin my day. I put my gift on the table with the others, smiled at Danny, and went to sit down near the front where I could see everything. That's when it happened. Rick walked over, all puffed up like a peacock, and looked me dead in the eye. Sorry, ma'am, he said, dragging that word like he was mocking me. That table's reserved for VIPs. You can sit over there. At first I thought he was joking, so I smiled and said, "Oh honey, I've been a VIP in this family since before you even showed up." But he didn't laugh. In fact, the man doubled down. "No, seriously," he said, waving his hand like he was shooing a fly. "That table's for the important guests, clients, business folks. You know, people who matter." And right then, my heart just dropped. My daughter, my own flesh and blood, stood there beside him, nodding. "Mum, please don't make a scene," she whispered like I was some embarrassment she had to hide. You ever had someone just rip your pride out in front of everyone? Kids running around, balloons everywhere, folks pretending not to stare. Yeah. That was me. I could feel every eye in that backyard burning into me while I stood there, clutching my little purse, trying not to cry. I smiled anyway. "Sure thing, sweetheart," I said softly. "Wouldn't want to disturb your important guests." Then I walked to that dusty folding chair way in the back by the fence. It was right next to the trash can, I kid you not. But I sat there, quiet, still, watching them laugh and eat at that fancy table like I wasn't even there. Now here's where it gets good. See, while they were so busy playing VIP, I was taking notes. Because one thing about me, I remember every little detail. The fake smiles, the whispers, the way my daughter pretended I didn't exist. You think that stuff don't sting? It burns. But I ain't the kind to lash out right away. Nah, I like to wait and make it count. So I sat there for a good hour, nibbling on my slice of store-bought cake someone handed me like it was charity. Danny came over once, bless his heart, hugged me tight, and whispered, "Grandma, why are you sitting here?" I just smiled and said, "I'm keeping the trash company, baby." Somebody's got to do it. He giggled, not understanding, and ran back to play. Meanwhile, I watched Rick go around bragging to his buddies about how exclusive this party was. How family's good, but business is better. My own daughter laughed along, like it was the gospel truth. Something inside me snapped right then. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, cold. You know that kind of silence before a storm hits? That was me. I made up my mind right there. This man and his ego were about to learn exactly what VIP stands for. When the party ended and everyone was packing up, Melissa came over and gave me one of those fake hugs. "Sorry about earlier, Mum. You know how Rick gets when he's stressed," she said. I smiled sweet as sugar and said, "Oh, don't worry, darling. I completely understand." But inside, I was already planning. See, Rick might have had his little VIP table that day, but the next birthday, oh, that one was gonna be mine. Baby, when Grandma throws a party, everybody shows up. Now don't get me wrong, I ain't talking about balloons and confetti. I'm talking about a lesson. One so sharp it sliced right through that man's ego. But to pull it off, I needed time. I needed to wait for the right moment, the perfect setup, and I needed to remind them who they were dealing with. So the next few weeks, I played it cool, texted Melissa like normal, checked in on Danny, even brought over dinner one night. You'd never guess I was scheming. But oh, I was. Because see, Rick thought he humiliated me in front of his business pals. What he didn't know was that I still had connections, real ones. Folks who respected me long before he ever strutted around in that overpriced watch. And let me tell you, when you've lived as long as I have, you learn something powerful. Revenge don't need to be loud to be legendary. Now, if there's one thing people always forget about grandmas, it's that we didn't survive this long by being stupid. We just play the long game. Quiet, patient, observant. So for the next few weeks, after that humiliating party, I kept my mouth shut and my ears open. I went to church, smiled through the pain, kept busy in my garden, and every time I watered those roses, I reminded myself, next year, I'm gonna bloom too, just like these flowers. Melissa would call every now and then, acting like nothing ever happened. "Hey Mom, Danny wants you to come to his baseball game this weekend," she'd say. Like she hadn't watched her husband treat me like a piece of furniture. And I'd say, "Of course, honey." I wouldn't miss it. But inside, I was just studying them, watching how they moved, how they talked, how Rick always had that smug look like he was king of the world. He was the type who bragged about every little thing, his new truck, his clients, his business trips that were really just golf getaways. And Melissa? She'd changed since marrying him. Used to be sweet, kind-hearted. Now she talked with that fake tone, like she was in some reality show, not real life. Anyway, a month went by, and I started hearing things. A friend of mine, Carla, who works at the local country club, mentioned Rick was trying to get a business loan to expand his dealership. Apparently, he'd been buttering up some local investors, throwing parties, hosting VIP dinners. The man was obsessed with status. And that, my friends, was my golden ticket. One afternoon, I was at the grocery store when I ran into one of those investors, Mr. Coleman. Sweet older gentleman, used to be good friends with my late husband, Frank. He spotted me in the produce aisle and said, "Well, if it isn't Miss Ellie. Haven't seen you since friend's funeral. How've you been?" I smiled. "Oh, you know, keeping busy, raising grandkids, and dealing with people who think they're VIPs. He chuckled. "You talking about that son-in-law of yours? Heard he's trying to get into business with my group. Seems a bit full of himself." And that's when it hit me. The perfect revenge wasn't about yelling back. It was about reminding him who actually had the power. See, my late husband wasn't just some factory worker. Before he passed, He invested in a few small local businesses. And guess what? One of those just so happened to be part of the same investor circle Rick was chasing. So I went home, dug out some old files from Frank's office, and there it was, his name still listed as a silent partner in Coleman's network. Meaning, that network still respected me, still owed me a seat at the table. And you best believe I was about to take it back. I called up Mr. Coleman that night. "How about we grab some coffee tomorrow?" I said. "I've got some ideas about your dealership expansion group." When I showed up, I wasn't just Ellie the grandma anymore. I was Mrs. Eleanor Hughes, widow of a man who'd helped half the town build their businesses. I wore my pearls, fixed my hair nice, and walked into that cafe like I owned it. By the end of that meeting, Mr. Coleman was laughing, patting my hand, saying, "You still got that fire, Ellie. You know what? You should come to the next investors' dinner next month. Rick'll be there." And just like that, my plans started forming shape. I went home that night, sat on my porch, and smiled to myself. The same man who told me I wasn't VIP was about to see me sitting at the real table. The one where his future was being decided. Now, while I was plotting the business side of my little gift, I had another idea brewing. See, Danny's next birthday was just around the corner again, and Melissa had already started planning it. She posted on Facebook, "This year's theme, Hollywood red carpet." Oh, the irony. You bet I RSVP'd yes. But this time, I wasn't just showing up. I was showing out. Over the next few weeks, I quietly arranged a few things. I spoke to a catering friend, made a few calls, and found out Rick had booked a fancy venue for the party, some banquet hall downtown. He was bragging all over town about it. "Only the best for my boy," he kept saying. Little did he know, his VIP list was about to include someone he never expected. Me, the old lady he told to sit by the trash. See, while Rick was busy acting like Mr. Big Shot, I got in touch with the event manager and offered to sponsor part of the catering through one of Frank's old company connections. You know what that means, right? My name went right onto the official sponsor list. Printed, framed, hung on the wall at the venue. Oh, I was grinning like a fox. The night of the investors' dinner came first, the one Rick was desperate to impress. I walked in calm, classy, pearls shining under the chandelier. The room went quiet for a second. Folks hadn't seen me in ages. And there he was, sitting at the far end of the table, talking too loud, laughing too fake. When Mr. Coleman stood up to make introductions, he gestured right toward me. "And we have Mrs. Eleanor Hughes with us tonight. Her late husband was a key part of this circle, and we're honored she's decided to rejoin us." Rick's jaw dropped. I could see him sitting there, trying to process what just happened. He mumbled something under his breath, then plastered on a fake smile, like, "Oh wow, small world." Yeah, small world, all right. Too small for his ego to hide in now. And let me tell you, I didn't have to say much. Just sat there, sipping my iced tea, smiling politely, while the real businessman discussed deals. Every time Rick tried to speak up, someone cut him off to ask me for my opinion instead. That's when I knew the power had shifted. But I wasn't done. Oh no, the real show was coming. At Danny's birthday, that was where I planned to drop the grand finale. I wanted him to feel that same sting I felt. Humiliated, cornered, small. But I was going to do it with class. No yelling, no drama, just pure poetic justice. Because see, revenge ain't about making noise. It's about making impact. By the time Danny's next birthday rolled around, I was ready. Oh, I'd played my part for a whole year, smiling, acting sweet, showing up to Sunday dinners like nothing ever happened. But under that calm grandma smile, I was building a storm. Now this year's theme was Hollywood red carpet. Remember? Rick went all out, rented a banquet hall, hired a photographer, even had those fake gold ropes and a big ol' sign that said, "Strong VIP entrance only." You'd think he was hosting the Oscars, not an 8-year-old's birthday. The morning of the party, I got up early, fixed my hair nice, put on a soft gold dress that shimmered under the light. Elegant, not flashy, just enough to make folks look twice. I slipped on my pearls. The same ones Frank gave me on our 25th anniversary. Every time I wear those, I feel like he's right beside me saying, "Go get him, Ellie." Now here's where it gets good. See, I'd arranged a little surprise. Remember how I became an official sponsor for the event? Well, the venue had to print a giant welcome board with the sponsors' names. Guess whose name was written in bold right at the top? Event sponsor, Mrs. Eleanor Hughes. The same old lady who wasn't good enough to sit at the VIP table last year now had her name plastered right above his. When I walked through that red carpet entrance, heads turned. The lady at the door smiled wide and said, "Welcome, Mrs. Hughes. Right this way, our sponsor table's reserved for you." I could feel Rick's eyes on me from across the room as the hostess led me to the main table, the biggest one, front and center, the one labeled VIP sponsors only. Oh, I sat down slow, smoothed out my dress, and smiled like the Queen of England. Rick looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Melissa came rushing over, trying to keep her voice low. "Mom, what are you doing?" I looked up all innocent. "Well, honey, they told me to sit here. It's the sponsor table. You don't want me disrespecting the host, do you?" She blinked, confused, then saw my name on the board, and that's when her mouth dropped open. You sponsored the party." I took a slow sip of my lemonade. Oh yes. Just wanted to make sure my grandson had everything he deserved. Figured I'd help out a little. Rick was standing a few feet away, pretending to talk to some guests. But I saw the sweat starting to collect on his forehead. His little VIP kingdom had just been invaded, and the invader was his mother-in-law. The crowd started whispering. Folks were pointing at the sign, then at me. Someone said, "Wait, isn't that Rick's wife's mom, the sponsor?" Yeah, the word spread fast. The party started, and Rick tried to take control of the mic like usual. He thanked everyone for coming, talked about how special the day was, yada yada. But when he got to the sponsor acknowledgements, his voice cracked, and a big, thank you to Mrs. Eleanor Hughes for her generous contribution. He couldn't even look at me. I smiled sweetly and gave a little wave. "You're very welcome, son." Oh, the awkward silence that followed. Chef's kiss. But I wasn't done yet. See, I'd planned one more surprise, Danny's gift. Not just any gift either. I'd spent months working on it. I started a little college fund in his name. $5,000 to start. Real money. I'd even gotten the paperwork framed, with his name printed big and bold. When it came time for gifts, Melissa called out, "All right, everyone, it's Grandma's turn." She sounded nervous, like she wasn't sure what I was about to pull. I stood up slow, held that framed certificate in my hands, and said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Last year, I was told I wasn't VIP enough to sit at the table. This year, I decided to buy one, so my grandson always knows where he belongs." The crowd gasped. Some folks even clapped. Rick tried to fake a smile, but his face turned red as a tomato. I handed the gift to Danny. He looked at me with those big eyes and said, "Thank you, Grandma," and hugged me tight. That hug right there, worth more than any revenge. But then came the icing on the cake. Right as Rick was trying to regain control of the moment, the event manager walked up to him with a clipboard and said, loud enough for half the room to hear, "Excuse me, Mr. Miller. Mrs. Hughes' payment for the sponsorship covered the full hall rental and catering. There's actually a refund due to your card." The man froze. Everyone turned. The look on his face? Priceless. He stammered, "Oh, really? I wasn't aware." I leaned forward and said sweetly, "Oh, I just wanted to take some of that stress off your shoulders, dear. You always look so tense." People laughed. Not meanly. Just the kind of laugh that says they know what's up. Rick excused himself, probably to go breathe in the hallway, while Melissa just stood there, looking like she'd seen a ghost. I almost felt bad. Almost. But I wasn't out to destroy them. I just wanted them to feel it. To remember how it felt to be small, humiliated, and left out. After the cake was cut, and everyone was mingling, Melissa finally came over. "Mom," she said quietly, "you really didn't have to do all this." I smiled. "Oh, sweetheart, I didn't do it for him. I did it for Danny, and maybe just a tiny bit for myself." She sighed, looking down. "I'm sorry about last year. I don't know what I was thinking. Now I could have rubbed it in, but that ain't my style." I just patted her hand and said, "Sometimes it takes a little embarrassment to remember where you came from." Then Danny came running up, face covered in frosting, yelling, "Grandma, come dance with me." And just like that, the tension broke. I danced with my grandson right there, under the fancy lights, surrounded by all those important people. Only this time, I wasn't by the trash. I was right in the center, where I belonged. Rick came back later. Quiet as a mouse. He didn't say much, just nodded when I passed him. Maybe for the first time, he realized you don't need a title or a gold watch to be VIP. Sometimes all it takes is respect, and a grandma who refuses to sit down when she's told to. As the night wound down, folks came up to me saying, "Mrs. Hughes, you sure showed him." And I'd just laugh. Because revenge don't always need fire. It just needs grace, timing, and a little old lady finesse. When I finally left, I gave Danny one last hug and whispered, "Always remember, baby, you come from strong blood. Don't ever let anybody tell you you ain't enough." He smiled and said, "You're the best VIP ever, Grandma." And I thought, yeah, maybe I am. Ain't it funny how quiet folks get after they've been humbled? Yeah, that was Rick after that birthday party. The man who used to walk into every room like he owned it suddenly didn't have much to say. Not to me, not to anyone. A week went by. Then two. I didn't hear a peep from him or Melissa. Normally, I'd get a text or a call, something like, "Thanks for coming, Mom," or "Danny loved your gift." But this time, nothing. Dead silence. And honestly, I was fine with it. I wasn't looking for their approval anymore. I'd made my point. My birthday gift wasn't just a check, it was a message. Loud and clear. Respect ain't optional. But oh, karma was still working overtime, and I didn't even have to lift a finger. See, word about that party spread around town faster than wildfire. It wasn't just a cute family story. No, people were talking. The sponsors, the investors, heck, even folks from the dealership heard how old Rick got upstaged by his mother-in-law at his own kid's party. The next time he walked into that investor meeting, folks were already whispering. They'd greet me before they'd greet him. "Good to see you again, Mrs. Hughes," they'd say, while Rick stood there, fake smiling, grinding his teeth. He was still trying to act like it didn't bother him. But I could tell it ate him alive. Men like Rick, they run on ego. And once you dent that, They start falling apart from the inside out. Melissa finally called me a month later. Her voice sounded softer, different, like she'd been doing some thinking. "Hey, Mom," she said, "can we come over for dinner this weekend?" Now that right there surprised me, but I didn't skip a beat. "Of course, sweetheart. Y'all come on over. I'll make my famous pot roast." Saturday night came, and they pulled up to my little house. Rick looking stiff as a board, Melissa trying to smile, and Danny jumping out the car, all excited like always. He ran straight into my arms, shouting, "Grandma, can we make brownies after dinner?" "You bet we can, sugar," I said, holding him close. We sat down at the table, and I could tell Rick was uncomfortable. He kept glancing around, clearing his throat, like he wanted to say something, but didn't know where to start. Finally, he put his fork down and looked straight at me. "Listen, Ellie," he said, voice low, "I owe you an apology. Now, I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting that." He took a deep breath and continued. "Last year, I was out of line. I said some things I shouldn't have. You didn't deserve that. I was stressed, trying to impress the wrong people, and I took it out on you. That was wrong." Melissa reached over and touched his hand. "We both acted like fools, Mom. I don't even know who we were that day." I sat there for a second, staring at them both. You ever have one of those moments where you can feel the years melt away? All the anger, the disappointment, just float off like smoke. That's what it felt like. I nodded. "Well," I said, "it takes a real man to admit when he's wrong. And it takes a real woman to stand beside him and own up too. So apology accepted." Rick looked like he didn't expect it to be that easy. But see, that's the thing about forgiveness. It ain't about letting them off the hook. It's about letting yourself breathe again. Dinner went on smooth after that. We laughed, talked about Danny's school, and by dessert, the tension had disappeared. It almost felt like old times again, before all the pride and foolishness got in the way. But life has a way of testing you, right after peace starts settling in. Couple weeks later, I was at the grocery store when I overheard two ladies whispering in the next aisle. "You hear about Rick Miller's dealership?" one said. "Oh yeah," the other replied. "Heard the bank's been breathing down his neck. Business ain't so good lately." I froze, my hand halfway to the cereal box. I wasn't gonna eavesdrop, but my ears have a mind of their own sometimes. Turns out, Rick's expansion deal had fallen through. Those same investors he'd been trying to impress. They backed out after seeing his temper and arrogance in action. Nobody wants to put money behind a man who disrespects his own family in public. Now, I ain't the kind to gloat, but I did shake my head and mutter, "What goes around, comes around." Later that night, Melissa called again. She sounded tired. "Mom, can we come over tomorrow? We just need to talk." When they showed up, I could tell something was wrong. Rick looked like a man who'd aged 10 years overnight. Melissa's eyes were red. She sat down and said softly, "Mom, we might have to sell the house. The dealership's in trouble. Rick's been trying everything, but it's not looking good." Rick sighed. "I didn't want to tell you, but yeah, the investors pulled out. Said I wasn't a good fit. I think they talked to Coleman." Now here's the thing. I did talk to Coleman, but not to ruin Rick. I just told him the truth. That behind all that flash, Rick was a good dad, a hard worker, just a man who let pride get in the way. Coleman must have taken that to heart, 'cause he called me the next morning. "Ellie," he said, "I've been thinking. Maybe Rick just needs guidance, not rejection. You still got that business sense Frank used to have. How about you join our board and help mentor him through this?" I smiled so hard, my cheeks hurt. "You serious, Hank?" "Dead serious," he said. "Man's got potential. He just needs a strong hand to keep him grounded. and I can't think of anyone better than you. So yeah, a week later, there I was, sitting across from Rick in a business meeting again. Only this time, it wasn't revenge, it was redemption. When I told him about Coleman's offer, his mouth fell open. You? What? You're gonna help me? I grinned. Well, somebody's gotta make sure you don't forget your manners next time you see a VIP table. He laughed, genuinely laughed. And for the first time since I'd known him, it didn't sound fake. Sometimes life gives you the chance to get even. But if you're lucky, it also gives you the chance to get better. That's when I realized maybe my real gift wasn't humiliating him. It was teaching him, reminding him that respect goes both ways, and you don't gotta step on people to rise up. And who knows, maybe I was teaching myself too. Now let me tell y'all something. Walking back into that dealership after all that drama, it felt like stepping onto a stage. Every single person there looked at me like they'd just seen a ghost wrapped in pearls. Some of them whispered, others just stared. I walked in slow, calm, confident, like I'd never left. Rick was standing by the office window, hands in his pockets, watching me approach. I could see that old pride still flickering behind his eyes, but it was dimmer now. The fire was there, but it'd learned respect. "Morning, Ellie," he said, his voice steady but softer than before. "Morning, Rick," I replied, setting my purse on the desk. "Heard we've got some numbers to fix." He nodded, then smiled just a bit. "Yeah, and some lessons to learn too. See, the thing about me, I ain't a business major. But I was married to one. My late husband Frank built our family from nothing. I watched him take a run-down garage and turn it into a small empire. I learned every trick in that book, quietly, patiently, while raising kids and balancing books. So when Coleman called me to help Rick get back on track, I knew exactly what to do. First thing I told him was, you don't need fancier cars, you need happier people. He looked confused. What do you mean? I leaned back in my chair. Customer loyalty. You treat folks like they matter, they'll come back. You make your salesmen feel respected, they'll sell like their life depends on it. He rubbed the back of his neck. Guess I've been doing the opposite. You think? I said, raising an eyebrow. He chuckled. All right, Teach. Show me how it's done. And boy did we work. Day after day, I showed up with coffee and notes. I taught him about community outreach, how to sponsor local school drives, how to give small-town folks a reason to trust him again. At first, people didn't believe it. They thought Rick's new kindness campaign was just PR fluff. But when they saw him out there actually helping, carrying boxes, talking to customers by name, handing out free oil changes, they started coming around. The dealership slowly came back to life. The phones rang more, the reviews turned positive, and even the employees started smiling again. One afternoon, I caught Rick watching me while I was checking invoices. What? I said, without looking up. He grinned. You ever think maybe you were supposed to be doing this all along? I laughed. Please. I did my time in this life already. I just like fixing what folks mess up. He nodded. You fixed more than a business, Ellie. I didn't answer that. Just kept scribbling. But inside, I felt a warmth I hadn't felt in years. Like I finally mattered again. Not just as someone's mother-in-law, or the old lady at the table, but as a woman with brains, grit, and a purpose. Months rolled by. We hit record profits that quarter. The investors came back, and the town started buzzing about the revival. Rick even gave me an office plaque that said, Ellie Hughes, the real boss. I laughed till my sides hurt. But deep down, it meant something. It meant he'd learned. But then came the test. Because life always throws one, don't it? One morning, Rick got a call from a fancy auto conglomerate in Dallas. They wanted to buy out his dealership for a big, shiny number. I mean real money. The kind that makes a man forget where he came from. He was thrilled, but I could tell that old ego started stretching its legs again. We could go national, Ellie, he said. Pacing miles this. We'll expand. We'll rebrand. Heck, maybe we'll even move out of this dusty town. I set my pen down slow. And what about your people? The ones who helped you rebuild this place. You gonna leave 'em high and dry? He frowned. It's business. They'll understand. I leaned forward, voice sharp, but calm. Rick, don't you dare forget what got you here. Don't turn into the same man who thought respect was optional. He didn't answer, just stood there, conflicted, torn between greed and gratitude. Days passed, and the tension grew. The Dallas deal was still on the table, and he had till Friday to decide. I didn't push him, just watched. Sometimes silence is louder than lectures. That Friday, he walked into my office holding the contract. I braced myself. I turned it down, he said simply. I blinked. You what? He smiled. You were right. This town believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself. I'm not selling that away for a few extra zeros. I grinned slow. Well, look at you, making grown man decisions. He laughed. Guess I learned from the best. That night, we held a staff dinner at the dealership to celebrate. I wore my best red dress, the one Frank always loved. Folks gave speeches, toasted, and even Rick got a little teary when he thanked me in front of everyone. When he finished, he said something I'll never forget. You once gave me a gift I thought was humiliation. Turns out, it was a lesson. And I'll never stop being grateful. I raised my glass and said, well, next time you see an old lady near the VIP table, you might want to pull up a chair for her. The room burst out laughing. But behind that laughter, there was truth. Respect isn't about age, money, or titles. It's about heart. When I went home that night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, looking up at the stars. I whispered, we did good, Frank. Sometimes revenge ain't about making someone pay. It's about making them grow. And that, my friends, is the sweetest kind of payback there is. Life has a funny way of testing you right when you think you've won. Just when I thought Rick had learned his lesson, the universe decided to throw me a curveball, one I wasn't expecting. It started on a Tuesday morning. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, scrolling through my emails. Most of them were bills, newsletters, and the occasional spam. But one subject line made me stop cold. Urgent, Danny Miller. Emergency contact needed. My heart skipped a beat. I grabbed the phone, calling the school immediately. The secretary answered, calm but firm. Mrs. Hughes, your grandson Danny had an accident on the playground. He's fine, but we need a parent or guardian to come. I threw on my coat, grabbed my keys, and drove like the wind. In my head, I was already panic-stricken, but I kept telling myself to stay calm. Danny was a tough kid. He'd get through this. When I arrived, I saw him sitting on the bench, one knee scraped and some tears on his cheeks. But his face lit up the second he saw me. Grandma, he yelled, reaching for my hand. I scooped him up, checking the scrape. Oh, baby, you scared me half to death. But look at you, still smiling. That's my boy. The nurse said it wasn't serious, just a minor injury. Danny would be fine with some antiseptic and a bandage. I sighed, relief flooding through me, and held him close. That's when I saw Rick and Melissa sprinting down the hallway, their faces pale, voices panicked. Danny! Oh my God! Rick shouted, grabbing his son. He turned to me, eyes wide. Ellie, thank you for being here. I don't know what I'd do without you. Melissa nodded, teary-eyed. Mom, you saved the day. Again. And in that moment, I realized something important. My role in this family had changed. No longer was I the old lady at the table, or the one to prove a point. I was a lifeline, a stabilizer, someone they could lean on. I smiled, brushing Danny's hair back. Well, sugar, you know I'll always be here for you. Doesn't matter who's yelling or acting like VIPs. Family comes first. Rick swallowed hard, nodding. I get it now, Ellie. Truly. I've been so focused on status, on appearances, I forgot what's real. Melissa squeezed my arm. We were blind, Mom.
We let ego get in the way. You didn't just teach Rick, you reminded all of us what matters. Danny leaned against me, still sniffling. Grandma, you're the best VIP ever. I laughed softly. Well, someone's gotta be, baby. The rest of the week was calmer, but I noticed something shift in Rick. He started taking the lesson seriously, not just for appearances, but in his heart. He'd check on employees more, listen to Melissa's advice, and even let Danny make small decisions about his allowance and chores. I watched quietly from my chair, proud but cautious. See, I've lived long enough to know change takes time. But this felt genuine. One evening, Rick approached me while I was sorting through some old family photos. He held a small box in his hands. Ellie, I wanted to give you something, he said softly. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, what's that? Revealing a gold locket with a tiny picture of Danny and me inside. For you, for always being there, and for teaching me a lesson I'll never forget. I felt tears prick my eyes. Rick, this is beautiful. Thank you. He nodded, shy but earnest. I know I yelled at you, treated you like you didn't belong, but I see now. You're the heart of this family, not me, not my money, not my titles. Melissa came over, resting her head on his shoulder. Mum, we've been idiots, but we're gonna do better, I promise. I smiled. Feeling a warmth spread through me that I hadn't felt in years. The anger, the need for revenge, it was gone. All that was left was pride, love, and the satisfaction of seeing them grow. The next day, I took Danny to the park. We laughed, we ran, we played tag. I let him lead the way, even when he took risks. I realized that being VIP isn't about sitting at the fancy table. It's about being present, being brave, and knowing you're valued by the people who matter most. Later, Rick came by with Melissa, bringing ice cream and apologies. We sat on the porch, watching Danny eat his treat, laughing at every little mess he made. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with pinks and oranges. You know, Ellie, Rick said quietly, I don't think I ever told you, thank you. Not just for helping the dealership, but for putting me in my place. I chuckled. Sometimes, son, that's the best gift you can give someone. And trust me, you needed it. Melissa reached over, resting her hand on mine. Mom, we've learned our lesson. Respect, love, and humility. That's the real VIP status. I nodded. Damn right it is. That night, I went to bed with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. No more grudges, no more hurt feelings. Just the satisfaction of knowing I'd turned a moment of humiliation into a lesson that would stick with them forever. And as I drifted off, I whispered to Frank's picture on the mantle. We did good, baby. We did really good. Because revenge, I realized, isn't always about payback. Sometimes it's about teaching people the value of respect, love, and understanding, and making sure the people you care about grow stronger because of it. Danny hugged me tight that night, whispering, "You're my hero, Grandma." And that's when I knew, the VIP table, I'd earned it a long time ago. The next few weeks were a mix of normal life and subtle reminders that respect had finally found its way back into our home. Rick was calmer, Melissa kinder, and Danny, well, Danny was Danny, still full of energy, still the light of my life. But as any grandma knows, life doesn't just hand out lessons without one last twist. You see, there was one more moment left to seal the story, the ultimate reminder that you don't mess with grandma and get away clean. It happened one Saturday afternoon. Danny had invited a bunch of his friends over for a little backyard playdate. I was watching from my porch, knitting, when I noticed Rick trying to show off again. He was talking about his dealership, trying to impress the other parents, when one of Danny's little buddies piped up. "Your dad's rich," the kid said, eyes wide. "But is he always like, grumpy?" Rick froze. He looked at me, then at his son, and I just smiled quietly. "Calmer, darling. Sometimes it comes in the form of an innocent kid." I decided it was time to add a tiny cherry on top of the lesson cake. I called Danny over. "Hey, baby, want to show your friends the secret grandma trick?" His eyes lit up. "Yes." I handed him a small box with a card inside. "Tell him what it is." Danny read aloud. "Grandma gave me a VIP medal because she said respecting people is the most important thing. And that's how you're a real VIP." The kids looked at Rick and Melissa, confused. Rick's face went red again, but this time, it wasn't anger. It was realization. Every eye in the yard seemed to lock on him, and I could see it settle in. Respect can't be bought. It can't be faked. It must be earned. Melissa reached over, squeezing Rick's hand. "See, even the kids get it now." I chuckled. Lesson finally hitting home, huh? The rest of the afternoon was full of laughter. Danny and his friends ran around. Rick helped with snacks, and Melissa joined in on games. The lightness in the air, a sense that the family was finally balanced again. I could almost hear Frank's laugh echoing somewhere, proud and approving. That night, after everyone had gone, I sat in my favorite chair, sipping tea, reflecting on everything that had happened. From being kicked out of the VIP table to becoming the real heart of the family, the journey had been wild, humbling, and surprisingly empowering. I realized revenge doesn't have to be bitter or harsh. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is teaching a lesson through patience, intelligence, and a little bit of style. Rick and Melissa had learned humility. Danny had learned respect. And I had proven that age doesn't define your influence. A week later, Rick came to me, holding a small envelope. I raised an eyebrow. "What's this for?" He cleared his throat. "Just a little thank you. You turned my life around. I don't know how to say it enough." I opened it to find a handwritten note and a small keychain with the word VIP engraved on it. Simple, sweet, and sincere. Now that's what I call a birthday gift, I said, laughing. He grinned, relief washing over his face. "I guess I finally get it. You don't need a table or fancy signs to be VIP. You just have to matter." And that, my friends, is the ultimate truth. Being VIP isn't about wealth, position, or even titles. It's about presence, integrity, and respect. And that's exactly the lesson I made sure my family learned. From that day on, our home was different. Rick became more attentive, Melissa more mindful, and Danny, well, he continued being my little sunshine. I still keep an eye on things, after all. Old habits die hard. But I knew the foundation was strong. Whenever someone asks me about that day at the birthday party, I smile and say, it wasn't about revenge, really. It was about showing them who I am, and reminding them that respect isn't optional. And now, whenever I walk into a room, I do it with the quiet confidence of a woman who's seen life, lost some battles, won some too, and learned that the real VIP table is wherever love and respect are sitting. So to all my viewers out there, remember this. Don't let anyone tell you you ain't VIP. You don't need a fancy title, a gold watch, or a reserved chair. You just need heart, dignity, and a little courage to stand up for yourself. Before I sign off, don't forget to smash that subscribe button if you've ever been underestimated, ignored, or told you didn't belong somewhere. And please, comment the city where you're watching from. I love seeing where my family of viewers comes from all over. Because, trust me, every single one of you has a VIP seat in life waiting for you.
And if anyone tries to push you aside, just remember, a little patience, a little planning, and a lot of dignity can turn even the worst insult into a lesson nobody will forget. Danny hugged me tight that night, whispering, "Grandma, you're my hero." And I laughed softly, stroking his hair. "No, baby, we're all heroes here. We just need to remember how to treat each other right." The lights dimmed, the stars twinkled above, and I leaned back, content. The old VIP table? Yeah, I'd been sitting there all along. And that, my friends, is how you turn humiliation into triumph, disrespect into respect, and a birthday party into a life lesson that sticks forever.